The scream ripped through the mansion like a blade slicing the night open. Every door slammed, every foot pounded, every shadow moved toward the sound. When the staff rushed into the marble bathroom, they found her trembling, staring at her hands, whispering like a woman possessed. "What have I done? Oh God, what have I done?" The Okoyes were a family that Lagos never spoke of casually. Their name carried too much weight. It was uttered with either envy or fear, never indifference. Their estate in Victoria Garden City sprawled like a private kingdom, secured by gates taller than most banks, with a reputation that ran from corporate boardrooms to the deepest trenches of the underworld. At the head was Chief Damian Okoye, a man whose smile could charm presidents, but whose silence could crush rivals. Educated abroad, calculated in every move, Damian commanded empires. Real estate, oil, shipping, and whispers said, things darker. But in the glow of chandeliers and the click of wine glasses, he was simply a devoted husband. His wife, Adana, was a woman carved out of elegance and ice. Slim, tall, always adorned in Italian silk or French lace, she moved like a queen who never had to raise her voice to remind you of her power. People bowed, men stared, women envied. But behind her carefully sculpted image lay a wound no silk could cover. For 15 years, her womb had stayed silent. Adana had everything. Fleets of cars, private chefs, a gardener who trimmed roses into sculptures, maids who walked on eggshells, and a driver who knew better than to ever look at her in the rearview mirror. But she didn't have the one thing that gnawed at her every night. A child, an heir, a piece of herself that would carry her blood and silence the whispers that never stopped. To the world, she was grace and power. To the people under her roof, she was fear incarnate. Maids trembled at her footsteps. The chef prayed over every plate. Even the driver avoided her gaze. Adana's beauty was admired, but her cruelty was legend. Some said it was because of her childlessness, bitterness fermenting in the silence of her womb until it spilled out as venom, yet Damian never strayed, not once. The elders had pushed. His own mother had hissed, "A man like you should have sons by now." But he shut them down every time. "Adana is all I need," he said. He meant it. But love could not fill the endless echo of what could have been. 15 years of IVF injections, hormones, travel from Lagos to London, Johannesburg to Dubai. Each failed attempt carved a piece out of her until there was almost nothing left. At 42, the truth hung heavy on her. Time was slipping, her chances fading like old perfume. The Okoye name demanded an heir. Her body refused to give it. Adana began to unravel. One day, her maid Ifeoma stumbled, dizzy from fever, and dropped a silver tray of food on the Persian rug. The crash silenced the house. Then came Adana's fury, a slap so sharp it echoed off the walls. "Get out! Out of my sight, you useless thing!" The girl was thrown into the street, sick, trembling, and broken. That night, the staff whispered in fear. Adana was changing. She was no longer just strict. She was becoming dangerous. Then it happened. One quiet night, restless and nauseous, Adana took a leftover pregnancy test she had tucked away. She didn't expect anything. She had bled hope dry years ago. But when she looked down, her heart froze. 2 bold, undeniable lines. She blinked. Took another. The same. Pregnant. After 15 years. Pregnant. She screamed, not in fear, but in disbelief. Tears spilled as she ran to Damian's study, the test shaking in her hand. "Damian, I'm pregnant." He stared, stunned. Then he rose, pulled her into his chest, and the man who rarely cried let his tears fall. After years of failure, heartbreak, and silence, finally, hope. Damian cocooned her in protection. Doctors came daily, chefs prepared carefully crafted meals, guards tightened security. And he hired a new maid, a young girl named Amara, slim, bright-eyed, quick on her feet. Unlike the others, she didn't flinch around Adana. She was attentive, gentle, and for the first time in years, Adana softened. She smiled. She laughed. She let her walls down. Amara became her shadow. She massaged her feet, read to her at night, listened to her fears. Adana trusted her more than anyone else. The staff whispered, "Madam is soft now. It's because of Amara. But fate is cruel." One afternoon, a sharp pain ripped through Adana's stomach. Then came the blood. Screams tore through the mansion again. Damian rushed her to the hospital. Hours later, the doctor walked out. "She's stable, but the baby is gone." The world collapsed. The heartbeat they had celebrated, the lists of names she had scribbled, the nursery designs, all gone. Adana didn't speak for days. When she returned home, she was no longer the woman who left. bitterness returned, sharper than before. Amara tried to stay close, but even she was not spared. Until the night had happened. Adana, in a fit of rage over something as small as bathwater being too hot, grabbed the bucket and flung it at Amara. The scream that followed was inhuman. Staff rushed in. Amara lay writhing on the floor, her skin blistered and peeling. Adana froze, staring at her own hands, whispering, "What have I done? What have I done?" But as they rushed Amara into the hospital and the nurse lifted her onto a stretcher, Adana's eyes caught something that froze her soul. A mark. A strange, rare birthmark carved into the girl's back. A mark she had seen before, because she was born with the same one. The birthmark haunted her. That night, Adana didn't sleep. She sat alone in the hospital corridor, her designer shawl draped carelessly, her hair undone for the first time in years. The memory of her mother's words clawed at her. That mark, rare in our bloodline. Only a few of us carry it. A curse or a gift, I don't know. But if you ever see another with it, they are your blood. Adana's mind spun. Amara, could it be? Could this scarred, broken girl she had tormented be her own child? The next morning, when Amara stirred from sedation, Adana sat at her bedside. Her voice, for the first time, wasn't sharp. It trembled. "Amara, the mark on your back, where did you get it?" Amara blinked slowly, her lips dry. "I was born with it, madame. The sisters at the orphanage said it was special. I've been there since birth. I don't know my parents." The word orphanage hit Adana like a gunshot. Her breath caught. She leaned forward. "Which one?" "Tell me which orphanage Amara named it." The room spun. It was the same orphanage Adana had walked into 22 years ago, with trembling hands, a newborn wrapped in a faded blanket, and a heart shattered by shame. She had been just 17 then, pregnant by a man who was supposed to protect her, her uncle. When his wife found out, she was thrown into the streets, swollen belly and all. No family, no friends, no help. She gave birth alone in a cheap clinic, and when the baby cried for the first time, she knew she couldn't keep her. She had no home, no money, nothing. She wrapped the child, kissed her forehead, and walked into the orphanage. She left her there, whispering, "Forgive me. One day maybe fate will be kind," and now fate had brought her back. Adana stumbled out of the hospital room, tears streaking her face. She made a call to a private DNA lab. Within days, results confirmed it. Amara was her biological daughter. When she saw the result, Adana broke. She collapsed in the corridor, sobbing like a child. All these years chasing IVF, treatments, injections, the child she longed for had been under her roof, scrubbing her floors, massaging her feet, enduring her wrath. She returned to Amara's bedside. Her hand trembled as she reached for the girl's bandaged fingers. "Amara, listen to me. I need you to hear this. I am your mother." Amara froze. Her swollen eyes widened. The silence stretched long and heavy. Adana's words cracked the air like thunder, but instead of relief, the weight in the room grew unbearable. The girl she had slapped, the girl she had poured hot soup on, the girl she had scarred for life, her own flesh and blood. Adana wept, not elegant tears, but raw, animal sobs. "Forgive me. Oh God, forgive me." But Amara just lay there, silent, staring at the ceiling, her tears rolling sideways into the pillow. Back at the mansion, Damian noticed his wife's sudden distance. That night, she confessed everything. Her teenage rape, the pregnancy, the abandoned child. His eyes filled with sorrow as she spoke, but he never interrupted. When she finished, trembling, he cupped her face. "You were a child, Adana. You didn't deserve that. None of it was your fault, but her guilt was relentless. She couldn't stop seeing the burns, the scar, the look in Amara's eyes. When Amara was discharged, she carried more than scars. Half her face was marked permanently, a brutal reminder of Adana's cruelty. The staff avoided eye contact, whispering behind closed doors. Damian tried to soothe his wife, but the truth was loose. Adana could no longer hold it in. One evening, she gathered everyone, staff, relatives, even Damian's mother, who never liked her, into the grand hall. Her voice shook as she confessed. "Amara is my daughter, the child I abandoned 22 years ago, the one I thought I had lost forever. She is mine, and the way I treated her, I have no excuse. I was broken. I let pain turn me into a monster." Gasps filled the hall. Damian's mother hissed under her breath. "So this is the secret that cursed this house?" The staff stood in disbelief. Some wept. Others stared at Amara with newfound reverence. The weight was too much for Adana. That night, as her body trembled, she collapsed. A stroke. She survived, but not whole. Her once commanding figure was now slumped in a wheelchair, her voice slurred, her hands weak, and from that chair, she watched Amara every day. Her daughter, her scarred daughter, the girl she had longed for all her life, the girl she had destroyed. Every morning, Adana whispered to herself in silence, "If I had known, if only I had known." But the scar staring back at her was a constant answer. Too late. The mansion was no longer a home. It was a stage for whispers. Servants avoided Adana's eyes, not out of fear anymore, but pity. Damian moved like a man caught between two worlds, protecting his wife, but drawn helplessly toward Amara. And Amara herself walked through the halls like a shadow, half scarred, half proud, silent, but burning. The revelation had changed everything. The Okoye Empire now had an heir, but not the kind the elders wanted. Not a son, not a child groomed from birth. A scarred maid plucked from the orphanage. Damian's mother was the first to strike. One humid evening, she cornered Amara in the garden, her gold head tie glinting in the moonlight. "You think being her blood makes you one of us? Don't fool yourself. You will never be a true Okoye. You are a stain, born of filth, carrying your mother's shame. Don't ever dream of taking what belongs to this family." Amara said nothing, but her silence was not weakness, it was fire, waiting for the right wind. Inside, Adana watched from her wheelchair, her body weak, but her mind sharp. She heard everything. That night, she called Damian. Her voice trembled, but her eyes burned with a fury he hadn't seen in years. "If anything happens to Amara, if anyone touches her, I will burn this house with all of us inside." It wasn't just guilt speaking, it was possession. Amara was hers, her blood, her redemption, her curse. But blood attracts vultures. A month later, lawyers arrived at the mansion. Damian had quietly started the process of rewriting his will, including Amara as beneficiary. Word leaked. Relatives who once smiled over wine turned into wolves. The whispers spread. The maid will inherit everything. One night, Amara woke to find her room ransacked, clothes shredded, books burned, her pillow slashed. On the wall, written in lipstick, "You don't belong here." She stood in the wreckage, trembling not with fear, but rage. For the first time, she turned to her mother's room and whispered, "If I'm truly your daughter, then I'll fight like one. They will never erase me again." Adana's eyes filled with tears. She reached for her scarred hand. "You're mine, Amara, and I will give you everything they tried to take from me." But the storm only grew. Damian's mother began visiting elders, stirring them against Amara. A secret meeting was held, where plans were whispered. Amara must be removed before Damian's will was sealed, removed quietly, permanently. The attack came swiftly. One rainy night, Amara was returning from the staff quarters when masked men grabbed her. They dragged her into a waiting car, her screams muffled. By the time the guards realized, she was gone. When the news hit the mansion, Adana lost what little control remained. Her body shook violently in the wheelchair, her screams raw, animalistic. "Find her! Find my daughter!" Damian launched his men, money spilling into the streets, hunting for her. 3 days later, they found her in an abandoned warehouse at the edge of Lagos, tied, beaten, but alive. When the men who ordered it were exposed, the mansion erupted. Damian's mother's name was at the center. She denied it, swore it was lies, but Adana's eyes told the truth. The family was rotting from inside. From that day, Amara was no longer silent. She carried her scars like a crown. She walked the halls of the mansion, not as a maid, but as an heir. Some bowed, others spat under their breath, but none could erase her now. Yet the real shock had not arrived. Not yet. One night, while rummaging through Damian's private study, Amara found a locked drawer. Inside, wrapped in old files, lay documents that froze her blood. Adoption records, bank transfers, receipts, all dated 22 years ago. Her hands shook. Damian's name was on them. He had known. All along, Damian had known about the child Adana gave up. He had tracked her, paid the orphanage, kept her under silent watch. When she turned 18, he had arranged for her to be hired quietly, placed under Adana's nose. He had orchestrated everything. Not fate, not chance. Damian. Amara staggered back, the truth choking her. He hadn't told Adana. He hadn't told anyone. He had played God with their lives. That night, when she confronted him, his face was calm, almost cold. "Yes, I knew, from the beginning. I needed to protect this family. I needed to protect her. Your mother. If she had known back then, she would have broken. She would have destroyed herself. So I kept you close enough to watch, close enough to control. Until the right time, Amara's voice shook with fury. You let her treat me like trash. You watched me suffer under her hands. You watched her burn me. And you said nothing. Damian's eyes narrowed, because pain was the only way she could recognize you. You needed to bleed into her life before she could accept you. Now she loves you more than anything, and it's because of what you both survived. The words sliced deeper than any knife. It wasn't fate. It wasn't redemption. It was manipulation. Damian Okoye, husband, father, empire builder, had orchestrated their suffering. Adana never knew. She never would. She sat in her chair, clutching her daughter's scarred hand every night, whispering apologies. But Amara knew the truth, and in that truth burned a decision, whether to forgive or to burn the empire down. The mansion no longer smelled of polished marble and imported wine. It smelled of tension, of secrets fermenting like rot. Amara moved through the halls differently now, not a servant, not yet an heiress, but something in between. Her scars gave her power. Her silence made them nervous, and Damian's secret weighed on her chest like a stone. Adana, fragile in her wheelchair, clung to Amara with desperate devotion. She wanted to give her daughter everything she had once denied her, but she never knew that Damian had played both of them, like a puppeteer pulling invisible strings. It was at a family gathering, one hot Sunday, that the storm finally broke. Relatives filled the banquet hall, glasses clinking, laughter false and sharp. Damian's mother rose first, her voice thick with venom. Is this what we have become? A dynasty handed to a maid? A bastard child paraded as an heir? Damian, you shame your father's name. The room went still. Adana's hands trembled on her wheelchair. Her voice cracked, but carried through the silence. She's not a bastard. She is mine, my blood, my child. Murmurs swirled, elders shifting uncomfortably. Damian lifted his hand for silence. His calm was more dangerous than fury. You all will accept Amara, whether you like it or not. The empire is mine to decide, and I have decided. But Amara stood slowly, her eyes locked on him, her voice steady. Tell them the truth, Damian. He stiffened. What truth? She stepped forward, scars glistening under the chandelier. Tell them you knew. From the beginning. Tell them how you placed me here. How you let her... She pointed to Adana, trembling in her chair. Pour soup on me, slap me, scar me for life, while you watched in silence. The hall erupted. Gasps, shouts, faces turned to Damian in disbelief. Adana froze, her lips trembling. Damian, what is she saying? For the first time, the man's mask cracked, his jaw tightened. His silence was an answer. Adana's cries split the room. You knew? She slammed her fist on the armrest of her chair, her body shaking violently. All these years, all this pain, and you let me torture my own child. Damian tried to move toward her, but she shoved him away, her body trembling as if her soul itself was tearing. You made me a monster, she screamed. You made me kill my own happiness. Donna's body convulsed. Her eyes rolled back. She collapsed in her chair, foam at her lips. The room exploded into chaos. Maid screamed. Elders shouted. Damian knelt, shaking her, but her body went limp. Adana was gone. The woman who ruled the house with iron hands, who longed for a child for decades, who finally found her daughter only to destroy her, was silenced forever, her last breath drowned in betrayal. Amara stood frozen, her scar burning hotter than fire. Her mother was dead. Her father was a liar. The family around her was a den of wolves, and the empire she was now heir to was soaked in blood and secrets. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She only whispered, her voice low, deadly. This house will never know peace again. That night, while the family argued over inheritance and elders tried to cover the scandal, Amara disappeared. She left the mansion without a word, without a bag, without looking back. Some said she fled Lagos. Others swore they saw her in Port Harcourt, building something of her own. But one thing was certain. The Okoye dynasty was broken. Damian, once feared, grew hollow, wandering the empty halls alone, haunted by his dead wife's screams and the ghost of the daughter who bore his name, but not his forgiveness. His empire began to crumble, piece by piece, as whispers of curses spread through boardrooms and back streets. And Amara? She carried her scars like fire, her silence like a blade. She was not her mother's weakness, nor her father's pawn. She was something else entirely, something the Okoye should have feared from the very beginning. The story ends not with redemption, but with ashes, because in Lagos, blood builds empires, but betrayal burns them down. The mansion fell silent after Adana's death. Once a palace of whispers and sharp commands, It became a mausoleum of echoes. The curtains stayed drawn. Dust settled on the grand piano, and the scent of Adana's perfume lingered in empty hallways like a ghost refusing to leave. Damian walked like a shadow of himself. His eyes, once calculating, now sunken and restless. He rarely ate. He barely spoke. At night, guards swore they heard him talking to her chair, whispering apologies into the dark. His empire began to slip. Business partners grew restless. Deals collapsed. Rivals moved in like sharks smelling blood. But the true fracture lay with Amara. She disappeared the night her mother's body was lowered into the ground. No note, no explanation. Just gone. Some whispered she fled to escape Damian's control. Others believed she was dead, her scarred body dumped into the lagoon by relatives desperate to erase her existence. But they were wrong. Adana had been a girl then, still innocent, still dreaming. The uncle who was supposed to protect her had turned predator. It happened in the silence of night, in the corridors of her foster family's house, his hand clamping over her mouth while her body froze. She never told anyone. Who would believe her? An orphan against a respected man? When her belly grew, the whispers began. Shameless girl. She's ruined. His wife discovered the truth and threw her into the street, alone, pregnant, at 17. She gave birth in a cheap clinic, the air heavy with the smell of blood and disinfectant. When the child cried, her heart shattered. She wanted to keep her. But how could she? With no money, no family, no future, she walked into the orphanage and left her there, tears blinding her. She thought she had buried that secret forever. But secrets rot, and when they resurface, they don't heal. They destroy. Years later, in a crowded flat in Port Harcourt, Amara rebuilt herself. Her scars drew stares, but she stopped hiding them. Instead, she turned them into her armor. She worked in a dingy tailoring shop by day, but by night, she studied. Business books, street deals, everything she could get her hands on. She learned how to hustle, how to turn 1 naira into 10. She built connections with men who wore gold chains and carried guns, with women who ran markets and underground businesses. Her name began to spread, not as the maid, not as the scarred girl, but as Amara, the woman who never bowed, never begged, never broke. Her empire grew in shadows. She didn't want Damian's wealth. She wanted her own. Every scar on her body became fuel, every insult a stepping stone. She rose from the ashes the Okoyes left her in, harder, sharper, untouchable, and she waited. Back in Lagos, Damian drowned in paranoia. With Adana gone and Amara vanished, he became reckless. He drank. He shouted at board meetings. He accused his own cousins of betrayal. Slowly, the empire slipped through his fingers. Whispers spread in Lagos that the Okoye dynasty was cursed. Contracts dissolved, rivals pounced. The once mighty patriarch was reduced to a man clinging to memories of power. One night, drunk and stumbling through the mansion, Damian stood before Adana's empty wheelchair. He collapsed into it, sobbing. "You were right. I destroyed us. I destroyed her, and now she'll destroy me." It was 7 years later when Amara walked back into Lagos. She didn't arrive quietly. She came in black SUVs, flanked by men who moved like shadows, carrying weapons hidden under tailored suits. She didn't knock. She entered the mansion as if she owned it. Damian, frail and gray, rose from his chair in shock. His glass slipped from his hand and shattered. "Amara!" His voice cracked. She stepped forward, her scar catching the light, her eyes cold. "I told you this house would never know peace again." He staggered, trying to reach her, but she stopped him with a single look. Around them, the staff bowed, not to him, but to her, the daughter he tried to control, the heir he thought he could manipulate, the woman who had built her own empire from nothing. She didn't come for forgiveness. She came for reckoning. You let her die with pain in her chest. You let me carry scars I can never erase. You want to control Damian. Now look at you, powerless, alone. Broken tears streaked his cheeks. He dropped to his knees. "Please, forgive me." Amara leaned down, her voice a whisper sharp enough to cut. "I am not here for forgiveness. I am here to take everything you built on lies. The Okoye name is mine now, and I will bury it under truth and blood." And with that, she turned and walked away, her men falling in step. Damian collapsed, clutching his chest, his cries echoing through the empty hall. By morning, word spread through Lagos. The Okoye empire had fallen. A new queen had risen, not the polished wife in silk, not the patriarch with iron hands, but the scarred daughter born in shame, raised in cruelty, forged in fire. Her name carried weight now, and her enemies whispered it with fear. Amara. Lagos had seen kings. It had seen tycoons who owned oil fields, politicians who owned votes, pastors who owned souls. But it had never seen anyone like Amara, She didn't rise like a socialite. She didn't smile for cameras or sit in charity galas. She moved in shadows and struck in daylight. She was everywhere and nowhere. Her name whispered in nightclubs, boardrooms, and back alleys. The scar on her face became her seal. If the scarred woman wants it, people said, you give it, or you lose more than money. Her rivals underestimated her. At first, they thought she was just a bitter girl with some money, but she played them one by one, studying their moves, breaking their alliances, turning their own men against them. Within 2 years, her reach spread from Port Harcourt to Lagos Island, then beyond Nigeria's borders. The newspapers began to call her the Queen of Scars. But Amara never smiled at the title. To her, the scar wasn't just on her face. It was in her chest, her bones, her blood, a scar named Adana. Meanwhile, Damian Okoye withered. His empire was gone, eaten alive by debts, betrayals, and Amara's silent hand pulling strings from the shadows. The man who once commanded boardrooms now sat alone in the cavernous halls of a decaying mansion, a bottle in one hand, regret in the other. On the night he died, rain pounded Lagos like drums of war. Damian sat in the study, staring at old photographs, his young wife in silk, his mother sneering with pride, the empire he had built brick by brick. Then his eyes fell on the one photo he kept hidden, a baby, wrapped in a blanket, tiny fists clenched. Amara. He pressed it to his chest and whispered through the tears, I'm sorry. I destroyed everything I touched. The staff found him the next morning, slumped in his chair, eyes open but empty, the photograph still in his hand. The patriarch of the Okoye dynasty died not with power in his grip, but with regret choking his last breath. At his burial, many didn't show. The empire was gone, the legacy tainted. But Amara stood at a distance, dressed in black, her face unreadable. She didn't step forward, she didn't cry. She only watched the coffin sink, her scar glistening with rain. Even in death, Adana's presence lingered. Amara couldn't escape her. Every mirror showed not just her scar, but her mother's eyes staring back. At night, she dreamed of the wheelchair, of hands trembling, of a voice whispering, if only I had known. She woke in cold sweats, gasping, clutching her chest as though her mother's ghost had reached inside her. One night, in the mansion she now controlled, she walked into Adana's old room. Everything had been left the same. The silk robes in the closet, the half-empty perfume bottle, the chair by the balcony. The air smelled faintly of lavender and regret. She sat in the wheelchair, closing her eyes. For a moment, she felt it. Her mother's bitterness, her pain, her hunger for love. The same hunger that lived in her veins. She opened her eyes and whispered into the silence, Are you proud of me now? The room creaked. A draft swept through, and for a fleeting second, she swore she heard her mother's voice, faint, trembling. Don't become me. Years passed. Amara's power grew unchecked. Her enemies disappeared. Her allies feared her more than they trusted her. She had everything she once thought she wanted. Wealth, control, respect carved out of fear. But power doesn't silence ghosts. On the anniversary of Adana's death, Amara returned to the family cemetery. The rain fell hard, lightning cracking the sky. She stood before her mother's grave, her empire at her back, her scar burning in the storm. She knelt, touched the cold stone, and whispered, I won, Mama. I took everything they tried to steal from you. From me, the Okoye name is mine. But as the thunder rolled, her voice broke. She pressed her forehead against the grave and wept for the first time in years. Not for herself, not even for her mother, but for the girl she used to be. The maid who scrubbed floors, who endured slaps and burns, who once believed love was possible. When she rose, her eyes were steel. She walked away, her men following, engines roaring through the storm. Behind her, the grave stood silent. Those who swore they were there that night claimed they heard it. A faint laugh, a woman's laugh, not cruel, not bitter, just haunting. As if Adana herself was watching from the other side, still bound to the empire of blood and scars. And so the Okoye dynasty ended, not with a legacy of wealth, but with ashes, betrayal, and a scar that outlived them all. Amara became more than an heir, more than a survivor. She became a warning. In Lagos, power isn't inherited, it's taken, and every empire built on blood will one day drown in it. Thanks for watching. If you want more raw, intense stories like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time.